And it links a little bit to our discussion we were having before around how we've got to this point where 10 new seats have suddenly appeared. And it dates back to 1998, where the majority government tried to get rid of the Greens by basically changing the makeup of Parliament. And if I put this video clip on here, you'll see them literally ripping the seats out. So they're literally changing the physical structure of Parliament to try and get rid of the crossbench. And our next guest is Peg Putt, who was the sole remaining Greens member after that shakeup. And you can see her here. Peg, you can't see this, but the folks at home can. She's brought her own lawn chair into Parliament and placed it where the crossbench used to be as a little sort of. I'm not sure if Peg would let me say F you to the major parties, just to let them know that she's still there and she still means business. So I'm going to bring her in now. This, ladies and gentlemen, Peg Putt from the Greens. How are you, Peg?
Can you hear me okay? Thank you. I can hear you. Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Can you give me a little sense of how it feels to sort of have been the last warrior standing back then and to now finally see that the potential crossbench, or at least the 10 seats returning?
Yeah, well, it was tough at the time because we knew that the change to numbers was done to try and get rid of the Greens, cut the proportion of the vote required to just lower than the record Greens vote. That was no coincidence. And it was hard when all the other members of the Greens in the Parliament at the time, who were great colleagues to work with and doing really good work for Tasmania, went and I was left. I was pleased that at least one of us had got re-elected, but it meant it was all down to me to hold the space, to make clear what had happened, to build up the Greens again, and to work really hard for the Parliament to be restored. Today is just fabulous because finally, 26 years later, I think it is, we're there. We're getting the numbers back. And that's not just about getting Greens back in Parliament. It's about getting the Parliament to function properly and getting it to reflect most accurately the proportion of votes coming from the Tasmanian people into individual candidates and parties that reflect their point of view. That was always what Hare Clark was meant to do. It's been messed up a bit for the last while, but it's back. And it also means that now there will be more ministers, at least one more, maybe two, so that they can cope better with the workload. Means that the government should have a backbench, or there will be plenty of people in the Parliament to bring the news from the grassroots to the Parliament, because that has fallen away. And that's how governments have got so very out of touch with the people, because they've simply been struggling with their workload without having the ability to also connect with the electorate and really know where things were at and what they needed to do. So it's going to be a whole lot better for Tasmania's democracy, and it's going to be great to have all those different varieties of views in the room, no one with a majority, people having to really talk to each other and work it out.
Well, you've already got someone from, I dare say, the mainland cheering you on. Amy Clark says, "What a weapon, Peg." So I can hear the excitement in your voice just as you talk, and it almost feels like you're considering maybe running again, Peg. Like, I don't know, you're going to throw your hat in the ring at the next time around if this whole Hare Clark thing gets rejuvenated the way you'd hoped?
Oh, well, look, I did 15 years in Parliament. 4 of those were by myself, very hard. Then I had to be the leader who taught the whole new team how to actually be members of Parliament, and we had to work out, how to run that and build the vote up and keep it there. So I think I did my dash, really. That was enough. And I haven't stopped working. I haven't stopped working for the environment and for forests in particular. I'm doing that internationally now. I'm coordinating a network of 300 non-government organisations in 60 countries on all continents except Antarctica. So, it hasn't finished. It's just gone in another direction. So I go to the climate negotiations of the UN and bring the forest issues. What I'm particularly working on is that we don't see it here much in Australia and in Tasmania, but in the rest of the world, especially Europe and increasingly in Japan and South Korea, they are burning massive amounts of forests in place of coal, in coal-fired generators and in new generators, and co-firing it with coal. So it's starting to destroy the forests of the world in the name of tackling climate change, which is utter nonsense because it's just as emissive of burning coal, and it's destroying the forests at the same time and their carbon stores and their ability to store carbon and their biodiversity, not to mention the communities that rely on them. So it's a really important piece of work to be doing that, and that spans those two conventions on climate and biodiversity. It's still politics. It's still knowing how to campaign in those sorts of arenas and get results. And that's really rewarding. And actually, I've had to build a team again too and teach people how to do it. So, it just goes into a different arena.
Well, it kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask you, which is about that sort of campaigning and collaboration side of things. I mean, based on your experience in the Tasmanian Parliament, and then also perhaps what you're seeing now with this shift towards minor parties and independents, how do you see it working if we start to find ourselves in that kind of more European model where there are coalitions of smaller groups forming governments and having to work out how to collaborate and work together? Do you think that Australians can find a way to make that work when we're not necessarily used to that?
I think so. And I know that, there have been parliaments in Australia where that has to happen. You see that conversations have to happen between all the various political groupings in the Senate at the moment, for example. And in Tasmania, we've had this type of situation many, many times. I was in that balance of power parliament from 96 to 98, where the Liberals were the government, the Greens were in the balance of power, and there was no arrangement except that we wouldn't vote no confidence except for in the case of corruption or gross maladministration. And what it meant was we had to talk with each other, not just us and the Liberals, but also the Labor Party, and there was another independent for a while, about everything on the floor of the House, or adjourn and go out and sit down and work it through. What it meant was that we brought the views of the different parts of the Tasmanian community to the Parliament, and then we had the onus on us to work out what is the best accommodation of those views. How can we start off with a piece of legislation that came, in this case, out of the Liberal Party, inject into it some of the concerns of Labor, some of the concerns of Green voters, and reach something that's workable, that reflects more all the views. And we did it. And people began to get quite used to it and actually missed it when it was gone. So, it can be done. Of course, you've got to be mature. You've got to be prepared to listen and really understand what other people are saying and respond to it and do it with goodwill. What we've suffered from here most recently in Tasmania is the Premier saying it's my way or the highway, and if it won't just dance around like marionettes when I say so to members of his own party and then to the people who left because of that sort of behaviour, then he's saying he can't cope and it's no good and it's unstable. Well, it's not unstable inherently. What it is a bit more work and a bit less bullying, and that's where we need to be.
Can I ask you one little curly one, Peg? It's an interesting proposition I've put to a few independents lately, which is this idea of the guarantee of confidence and supply, where I know there's been several high-profile independents in the past who right out from the gate have said, no, I will absolutely guarantee confidence and supply because I don't want to be seen to be destabilising a government. Yet to a immature renegade like myself, it feels like just this beautiful piece of leverage that you could have in your back pocket to try and get good outcomes for the people who voted you in. You mentioned there a little bit about the arrangements that you had in that minority government, but what do you think independents or minor party candidates should be looking to do with confidence and supply? Should it be a solid guarantee, or should they have it in their back pocket as an option if worst comes to worst?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, and I think it's something that every individual in that situation has to work through for themselves, really. I think also, the governor needs to know, is there someone I can commission as Premier, and is there some party or grouping that I can commission as the government? And so that's really where these guarantees come in. that it won't be a week by week thing that we're suddenly having to, once you've got no confidence in the government, then are you going to just keep rearranging the numbers, or are you going to go to another election? And that does get quite unstable. You can do a lot. Perhaps say to a government, we really need you to pay attention when you're putting your budget together. And we do want to have some sort of conversation with you about that, because clearly it's important. Where the money goes is what becomes a priority, and find a sort of finely balanced way to do that without throwing the whole thing into disarray. I think what everybody has to understand is that nobody has all the power, and that the fact that you got elected on a platform doesn't mean you can tell everybody else what to do. We are representing the electors here. When as much as we might be representing a party, it's actually the electors, and what they want that has to be paid attention to, and in that sort of balance of power situation, there's much more likelihood that that's going to get listened to, because everybody wants it to actually work. They don't want to have to keep having instability and to go back to elections and to wonder what else is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think the word mandate gets thrown around a little bit too much, where someone gets voted in and they feel like just because they managed to corral 40% of a primary vote, that somehow that gives them a mandate to do whatever their party platform is without any consultation. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of the way you're describing that, Peg. I think it's a question I've asked Meg before. It's a interesting little thought exercise for where politics might go. Do you feel like, from what you're seeing, is this the green shoots of a new way of doing politics, or am I being a little too idealistic and jumping the gun a bit too soon?
Well, we felt like it was the green shoots of that when we were doing it in previous balance of power parliaments, but the big parties hated it because it wasn't all their own way. And so we'll see, because I think what's happened this time is that the people of Tasmania have said, we're fed up. This mob that's been in government and the last lot just simply haven't got it in terms of all the things we're concerned about and how we want things to go, and that we don't want just this mandate argument. When you vote for a political party, they have a huge platform. Which bit of it did you like and not like? So it is a really sort of troubled, sort of perplexing idea about the mandate. Hopefully we are going somewhere new. I work with all these people based in Europe, coordinators I co-coordinate with in Finland and in the Netherlands, and in both places they have multi-party governments, and they don't expect for any party to get a majority. It's just unheard of. And when I've been talking to them about how, there's this sort of apoplexy develops if there's not going to be one major party completely in control of everything, they're horrified. I can't believe that people would tolerate one party telling everybody and just running everything.
Well, Peg, it's super generous of you to take the time, and I was really chuffed to find that bit of footage today. It was actually the first time I saw it of you on the lawn chair there. So thanks for creating a classic moment in Australian politics for us.
Thank you. Well, you can't keep a good campaigner down.
And enjoy the resurgence of the Greens, in this Parliament. Because
that's what we're hearing.
Exactly what these major parties were seeking to stamp out, and it's a big night for the Greens from the look of things, Peg. So really enjoy that, because you're a staunch person for the Green movement, and there's something to celebrate tonight from the look of things.
Well, thank you, and I think it's just great for all those Greens voters. They've been there all the time, and they're citizens just like everyone else, and they're getting their representation. So that's great.
Thanks so much, Peg. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.